The void pulsed with a silent, hungry dread, a vast canvas for the HMS Unyielding resolve. She was not built for beauty, nor for grace. Her lines were a brutal testament to raw power, her hull a nightmare of stacked ablative plating and railgun emplacements. She moved like a mountain of condensed spite, a monument to the unyielding spirit of humanity. Lieutenant Kalen, tactical systems lead, felt her low thrum vibrate through the deck plating, a deep, resonant growl that settled in their bones. This wasn't a vessel of exploration. This was a statement. A declaration carved from thousands of tons of hardened alloy and propelled by fusion-driven fury. For 3 years, Kalen had served on her, learning every system, every subtle tremor that spoke of her immense power. They called her the negotiator, though never to her face. Officially, she was a first contact vessel, dispatched to a contested neutral zone where the Xylosian ascendancy had recently made overtures. But the ship's purpose was clear to everyone who walked her decks. The unyielding resolve wasn't here to parley. She was here to make sure anyone who crossed humanity's path understood the cost of a challenge. Kalen stood at their console on the bridge, the massive viewport a window to the crushing dark. Captain Theron Vance stood before it, his back ramrod straight, hands clasped behind him. Vance was a legend, his record a string of impossible victories and uncompromising decisions. His face was a study in granite, his eyes the color of deep space. He did not speak. He did not need to. The silence on the bridge was eloquent, heavy with anticipation. A chime, not ours. The Xylosian envoy ship appeared on the main view screen, a shimmering sliver of iridescent silver, all graceful curves and flowing lines. It looked like a living sculpture, an aesthetic marvel designed to inspire awe and perhaps a touch of deference. Kalen watched it, a primal instinct stirring deep within. It looked fragile, deceptively so. The comms array flickered. A voice, smooth and resonant, filled the bridge. It spoke in a language Kalen did not understand, but the ship's advanced translation AI rendered it instantly. "Greetings, unknown vessel. We are the Xylosian envoys of the Harmonic Conclave. We approach in peace, seeking dialogue and mutual understanding. Your vessel's formidable presence suggests a robust defense. We invite you to power down your primary armaments for a more conducive exchange." Captain Vance did not respond. His eyes remained fixed on the elegant alien craft. Kalen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the bridge's climate control. This was it. The true first contact, not a handshake but a challenge. "Captain," Kalen murmured, keeping their voice low, almost swallowed by the ambient hum of the ship. "They're awaiting a reply." Vance simply nodded, a slow, deliberate motion. "Helm, adjust vector by 2 degrees port. Tactical, bring spinal cannon to full charge. Maintain stealth profile." Kalen felt a surge of energy, a ripple of controlled power as the unyielding resolve shifted, an almost imperceptible adjustment to her colossal mass. The main cannon, a weapon capable of gutting a moon, began to hum, a deep, predatory rumble that vibrated through Kalen's very bones. It was a sound that bespoke raw, destructive potential, a sound that needed no translation. The Xylosian ship hesitated. Its iridescent hull rippled, patterns of light shifting like disturbed water. Its own weapon signatures, previously dormant, flickered into life, tentative, uncertain. The Xylosians were scanning them, their diplomatic facade cracking under the sheer, unbridled threat of the human vessel. The alien voice returned, no longer smooth, now edged with a growing wariness. "Unknown vessel, your actions are perceived as hostile. We reiterate our request to power down your armaments. Continued aggressive posturing will be met with reciprocal action." Captain Vance finally moved, one step closer to the viewport, his gaze unwavering. "Reciprocal action," he repeated softly, a hint of something that might have been a smile playing on his lips. "They have no idea what that means." Kalen understood then. This wasn't about deterrence, this was about definition. humanity's definition of diplomacy. The Xylosian ship flared. A brilliant emerald beam lanced out, striking the Unyielding Resolve's forward shield array. The impact shimmered, a wave of displaced energy radiating outwards like a ripple in a cosmic pond. The deck shuddered, a slight jolt that made consoles flicker. "Shields holding at 97%, Kalen reported, their voice steady, but an adrenaline surge already coursing through them. "Minimal energy drain, no structural compromise." Vance did not flinch, he simply raised a hand. "Return fire, full yield, target their primary command core." The Unyielding Resolve answered with a roar. The spinal cannon discharged, a spear of incandescent fury that tore across the void. It wasn't just a beam, it was a pure, concentrated line of absolute destruction. It impacted the Xylosian ship's elegant hull, not merely piercing it, but evaporating the entire midsection in a silent, violent outburst of incandescent gas and molten shrapnel. The Xylosian vessel reeled, twisting in space, its remaining sections venting atmosphere in crystallizing plumes. One of its weapon emitters, still glowing, tore free and tumbled away, its light fading into the deep. The alien vessel spun wildly, its remaining weapon systems flaring in a desperate, uncoordinated volley. Pulses of light, streams of what looked like solidified energy, hammered against the Unyielding Resolve's shields. Alarms shrieked on the bridge. "Shields at 82%, the defensive officer called out, his voice strained. "Port quarter armor overheating, secondary power grid taking hits, rerouting." Through the chaos, Vance remained a statue of grim resolve. "Tactical, 2 more spinal shots, engines, render them immobile." Kalen's fingers danced across the console, inputting targeting corrections. The ship rumbled again, a second blast gutting the alien vessel's propulsion array. It died then, its elegant form a broken, drifting husk, bleeding light into the void. The alien comm channel went dead. Not just quiet, but a profound, absolute silence. No signal, no transmission, no trace. Vance narrowed his eyes. "They're masking, or they're done." Before he could finish, Kalen's sensors lit up with new massive signatures. Not one, not two, three. 3 new vessels emerging from a spatial distortion less than 1,000 clicks off their starboard bow. These were not elegant envoys. These were blunt, dark, and utterly devoid of anything resembling aesthetic grace. They were pure, unadulterated instruments of war. Each dwarfed the Unyielding Resolve significantly. Their weapon arrays blazed with a chilling, internal light. "Contact, multiple signatures." Kalen's voice was sharper now, a tight knot of anticipation forming in their gut. "Classification unknown, but these are not diplomatic vessels. They're closing fast." Vance didn't react, his gaze fixed on the new threat. "No such thing as the wrong target if it sends the right message." His voice was low, almost a whisper. The lead alien warship, a hulking behemoth, began to unfold. Sections of its forward hull split open like the jaws of some titanic beast, revealing a gargantuan weapon assembly that pulsed with raw, surging energy. "Sir, massive energy spike," Kalen reported, locking their console onto the unfolding weapon. "Power output off the charts, getting readings across the entire EM spectrum. I believe it's a super weapon, Captain." Vance finally nodded, a flicker of something akin to grim satisfaction in his eyes. "Helm, 30 degrees starboard roll, pitch down 6. Tactical, concentrated salvo on that weapon assembly. Heavy ordnance only." The Unyielding Resolve groaned in protest as she shifted, inertial dampeners straining. She moved like a Leviathan, slow to turn but unstoppable once committed. Her railguns thundered, spitting slugs the size of shuttlecraft that screamed through space, followed by searing bolts of azure plasma. The alien superweapon flared once, then shuddered under the impacts. Armor plates ruptured, glowing conduits spilling internal machinery into the vacuum, but it continued to build. A beam, not of light or plasma, but of something that seemed to bend the very fabric of space around it, erupted from the weapon's maw. It lashed across the void, slamming into the Unyielding Resolve's forward quarter. The ship lurched violently. Kalen was thrown against their console, the world strobing red. Alarms screamed. "Forward armor breach, Section 12 venting," someone shouted. "Shields down to 52%. Kalen gritted their teeth, forcing their hands back to the controls. The impact had been like a silent sledgehammer, rattling their very being. Vance did not flinch. "Return fire. Maximum yield. Hit them until they stop moving." The spinal cannon cycled again, its vibration building to a primal thrum. Kalen could feel it in their ribs, in their jaw, as if the entire ship was winding up for a killing blow. "Firing solution locked," Kalen confirmed. "Target main weapon housing." "Do it!" The Unyielding Resolve roared. The shot carved a molten scar straight through the alien superweapon, tearing its housing apart and sending fragments tumbling into the void. But instead of falling back, the alien ship surged forward. Its hull began to reconfigure, entire sections folding and sliding to form jagged protrusions like the spines of some abyssal nightmare. "Boarding configurations," Kalen realized aloud. The tactical officer swore under his breath. "Multiple spikes, dozens of small craft detaching from the underside. They're coming fast." "Boarders," Vance's lip curled into something between a sneer and a smile. "Let them try." From the Unyielding Resolve's flanks, a swarm of hunter-killer warheads streaked into the black. Each one found its target with surgical precision, detonating the alien boarding craft into silent blossoms of fire and debris. A few, however, made it through. They slammed into the hull with bone-rattling force, magnetic clamps anchoring them in place. The internal alarms shifted tone. Hull breach warnings, security alerts, compartment lockdowns. "Security teams, repel boarders." Vance's voice was calm, resonating through the ship-wide. "Lethal force authorized." Kalen unclipped their sidearm, an M79 recoil pistol modified with an extended magazine and an underbarrel shock emitter. If they breached the bridge, everyone would be fighting up close. The alien capital ship kept pounding their shields, even with its main weapon disabled. Secondary batteries lit them up with relentless precision, and the Unyielding Resolve's counterfire tore more and more holes in its armor. It wasn't a clean fight anymore. This was a slugging match. Two beasts locked jaw to jaw, tearing chunks out of each other to see who fell first. "Shields at 38%, Kalen reported, sweat running down their back. "Hull integrity compromised in 4 sectors. We can't hold this pace forever." Vance leaned forward, his voice low enough that only Kalen could hear it. "We don't need forever. Just long enough to convince them they made the worst mistake of their lives." The ship shuddered again. Somewhere deep within the Unyielding Resolve, the sound of tearing metal echoed faintly through the superstructure. Then, without warning, the alien ship broke off its attack. Its massive frame rotated away, venting streams of glowing particles from dozens of ruptures. It wasn't retreating in panic. It was withdrawing in discipline, covering its departure with a final volley that rattled the shields down to 22%. "Do we pursue?" the helm officer asked. Vance shook his head. "No, let them run. They'll bring back the story of what they found here." Kalen sat back in their chair, exhaling slowly. Their hands were trembling now, not from fear, but from the release of it. The aftershock of knowing they'd stared something enormous in the face and hadn't blinked. Across the viewport, the wounded first ship was gone, either destroyed in the crossfire or already pulled out of the fight by whatever passed for alien medics. The void was littered with debris, the twisted remains of boarding craft, and the fading embers of missiles that had never found their mark. The Unyielding Resolve was bleeding, but still alive. Vance finally turned to the bridge crew, his voice steady. Damage control to all sections. Log the engagement as hostile contact, unprovoked aggression, and make sure the record shows." He paused just long enough for the silence to become its own punctuation. We ended negotiations. Kalen glanced back at their console, watching the alien ships vanish into the black. This wasn't the end. It was just the start of a war that humanity had already won in the first 5 minutes. The alarms for boarders are different from any other sound a ship can make. Hull breach alarms are urgent. Evacuation signals are commanding, but the border alert is personal. It's sharp, repetitive, almost mocking. It tells you someone who isn't supposed to be here is walking your halls, breathing your air, and they have come to neutralize you. The bridge stayed locked down, blast doors sealed, security bulkheads reinforced. But that didn't mean they were safe. If the aliens got a plasma cutter into one of the primary system's conduits, they wouldn't need to shoot them to end the fight. Vance didn't need to tell Kalen twice. Kalen pulled their sidearm, chambered a round, and clipped a spare magazine to their belt. "Kalen," Vance said, his eyes still locked on the tactical readouts. "You're on deck with security. They breached too deep. I want eyes on it. Clear them out." "Yes, sir." Kalen slung the pistol low, keyed open the secondary bridge exit, and stepped into the corridor. The passage outside was a study in emergency lighting. Red pulses, shadows stretching and collapsing as the strobes hit. The air had that faint ozone tang you get when energy conduits are running hot. Kalen's boots thudded against the deck as they moved, the vibration telling them the unyielding resolve was still adjusting her orientation somewhere in the void. The first impact Kalen heard wasn't gunfire. It was a security team slamming into a bulkhead, bodies skidding across the deck plating. An instant later, the thing that had thrown them followed. The alien was about 2 meters tall, hunched slightly forward, its body encased in segmented plating that looked half-grown, half-forged. Its limbs were too long, the joints bending at angles that made Kalen's skin crawl. Instead of eyes, it had a smooth plate of black chitin where a face should have been. It didn't hesitate, just lunged. Kalen fired twice center mass. The rounds punched into its plating with sharp metallic cracks, and it staggered but didn't fall. It moved like a predator in a frenzy, claws tearing sparks from the deck. The third shot was at its head. The plating there cracked, spraying something dark and viscous across the wall. The alien dropped, its claws scraping once against the metal before it went still. Kalen grabbed one of the security officers and hauled him upright. "Where's the breach?" "Section 9 Maintenance Bay," he panted. 3 pods clamped in. We think a dozen, maybe more, inside." Kalen keyed their comm. "Bridge, Kalen, confirm multiple boarders. Section 9, engaging." The maintenance bay was chaos. When they got there, one of the boarding craft had torn through a section of the wall plating, leaving jagged edges glowing from the heat. 2 alien bodies were already down, but more were pressing through the breach, weapons spitting bursts of pale green energy. Security teams had cover behind equipment crates and bulkheads, returning fire in tight, controlled bursts. The smell of burned metal and something organic mixed in the air, clinging to the back of Kalen's throat. Kalen dropped into cover beside a crewman, peeked, and put 2 rounds into the nearest alien's midsection. It folded forward, a wet, gurgling sound escaping its chest. The next one came straight at Kalen. Kalen let it close the distance, waited until they could see the strange, pulsing veins in its armor, and hit the shock emitter on their pistol. The burst of electricity lit up its interior, locking its limbs mid-stride before it collapsed, twitching. "Push them back," Kalen shouted. They surged forward as a unit, forcing the aliens toward their breach point. The aliens fought like they were not afraid of their own end. Fast, aggressive, no wasted motion. But the unyielding resolve's corridors aren't forgiving to creatures that big. Every turn, every bulkhead became a choke point, and the humans used that. One alien tried to vault over a crate to get behind their line. Kalen grabbed its arm mid-leap and yanked, using its own momentum to slam it headfirst into the deck. Something in its neck gave way with a sharp, wet snap. Another charged one of the gunners, claws outstretched. Kalen shot it in the knee. The joint shattered, and it went down in a heap before Kalen finished it with a shot to the throat. The fight in the bay lasted maybe 5 minutes, but it felt like an hour. By the time the last alien fell, the deck was slick with a mix of their black fluid and human blood. They sealed the breach with emergency bulkheads, welding them in place while the security chief ran a sweep for any stragglers. Kalen's arms ached, their ears rang from the close gunfire, and their pulse still hadn't slowed. On the way back to the bridge, Kalen passed medics dragging wounded crew on stretchers. Some were still conscious, teeth clenched against the pain. Others, not so much. One body was covered fully with a thermal sheet. Kalen didn't recognize the boots sticking out from underneath, but they knew they'd seen them at mess more than once. When Kalen stepped back into the bridge, Vance glanced at them only briefly before turning back to his display. "Report!" "Breach neutralized," Kalen said. "Borders are down. Section 9 sealed." Vance nodded once. "Casualties?" Kalen hesitated. "More than we wanted, less than they came for." Something almost like approval flickered across his face. The tactical officer turned in his seat. "Sir, long-range sensors picking up multiple contacts, same signature as the second ship. Maybe 4, maybe 5. Eat a 20 minutes. The bridge went still again, that predator's stillness. They just barely cleaned their own holes, and now the wolves were circling in packs. Vance leaned back in his chair, clasped his hands, and looked at the void beyond the viewport. "Good," he said softly. "Let them come." The first one learned what happens when they knock on humanity's door. Kalen tightened their grip on the pistol at their side. Their knuckles were still stained with alien fluid, and the smell of it clung to their uniform. If they wanted a war, the unyielding resolve was ready to teach it. The void was never silent to Kalen. People talk about space being this endless, soundless canvas, but when you've been in it long enough, you hear things. The hum of the engines vibrating through your boots, the faint groan of the hull adjusting to temperature shifts, the electric buzz of the shields when something big is coming. That last sound was already creeping through the unyielding resolve's bones before the fleet even showed up on visuals. The hum was deeper, heavier, like the ship itself was bracing for impact. Tactical put the display on the main viewport. 4, no, 5 signatures, all with the same dark, light-swallowing hull as the second ship they'd fought. They came in a wide formation, each ship moving at an exact speed, not a single straggler. That alone told Kalen something. They weren't a warband. They were military, disciplined, coordinated. "They're closing fast," the tactical officer said. "Estimated time to weapons range, 18 minutes. 18 minutes felt like nothing. You could barely brew a decent cup of coffee in that time. Vance stood at the center of the bridge, hands clasped behind his back. "Status of our weapons?" "Spinal cannon operational, primary batteries online, missile bays at 70% capacity," came the reply. "Shield generators 1 and 2 stable, but number 3 is down to 82%. 82 wasn't terrible, but if the fight went long, that percentage would fall like a stone. The captain's eyes shifted to Kalen. "Kalen, damage control." "Teams are sealing compromised sections. We've got full atmosphere in every habitable area again. We're still running on secondary coolant in the forward railgun banks. Keep it that way until they're in range. I don't want another heat spike locking out our guns in the middle of a volley." "Aye, sir." The comm crackled. An incoming hail from the fleet. It wasn't a voice this time. It was a video feed. The image was grainy at first, then cleared into the strange, eyeless faceplate of one of the aliens. The plate was covered in glowing symbols shifting in patterns Kalen couldn't read. The translation AI did its best. Human vessel, you have destroyed 2 ships of the untranslatable fleet and defeated our warriors. You will power down weapons and prepare for capture. Resist, and you will be annihilated." Vance didn't blink. "Tell them!" He let the words hang as if considering. "Negotiations are still over." They cut the transmission before the aliens could answer. The fleet adjusted formation. 4 ships angled to encircle them, the 5th holding back in the center. Command ship, most likely. "Sir," Kalen said, leaning toward him, "if they box us in, we won't have the room to maneuver." "I know," he said. "That's why we hit them before they finish the box." Orders went out fast. Helm adjusted their heading. Tactical recalibrated targeting priorities, and the missile crews began feeding warheads into launch tubes. The hum of the spinal cannon started again, deep and ominous, building in Kalen's chest like an oncoming storm. They fired first. A wall of energy slammed into the Unyielding Resolve's shields from 3 different directions at once. The bridge lights dimmed. The deck under Kalen's feet shuddered hard enough to rattle their teeth, and every console flashed red. Shields at 64%, secondary armor heating, starboard batteries taking a pounding. Vance didn't waste breath asking for damage details. "Return fire, all batteries, target their lead interceptor." The Unyielding Resolve spoke in fury, railguns thundering, plasma lances slicing through the dark, missile salvos streaking toward the nearest ship. The first volley hit home, tearing through its forward plating and venting a stream of fire and debris into the void. But they didn't slow down. 2 ships broke off from the encirclement, rushing to close the distance for a decisive strike. Their hulls shifted mid-flight, sections reconfiguring into weapon pods. "Incoming heavy ordnance!" the tactical officer barked. The alien barrage lit up the Unyielding Resolve shields, hammering the same section over and over until the readout flashed critical. "Shields on Sector 6 down," came the call. The deck pitched sideways as one of their plasma bursts chewed into exposed armor. Kalen caught themselves on their console, teeth gritted. Vance finally raised his voice. "Shift all fire to the right flank. Neutralize them before they breach us again." The concentrated counterattack worked. 1 alien ship's midsection tore open under the Unyielding Resolve's guns, its internal core flaring bright before the whole thing went dark and began to drift. But now 3 were still on them, and the command ship hadn't even fired its main weapon yet. "They're forcing us into a standoff. We can't win long-term," Kalen said, low enough for only the captain to hear. He glanced sideways at Kalen. "Then we don't fight them long-term." Kalen didn't know what he meant until he opened a comm line to engineering. "Prepare overdrive sequence on the spinal cannon." The room went still. Overdrive was a last resort mode. It could fire a shot so powerful it would melt the cannon's own housing if you didn't vent half the ship's coolant into it. "Sir," Kalen started, "you'll burn out the barrel. We'll lose our only real advantage." "We'll only need it once," he said. The overdrive prep countdown appeared on Kalen's console. 60 seconds. Every alien ship in range kept hammering them, the hull groaning with each impact. 40 seconds. Their shields were down to 30%, armor breaches in multiple sectors. Damage control was reporting casualties. Some sections losing atmosphere entirely. 20 seconds. 1 alien ship was closing fast on their port side, probably hoping to ram or attach a boarding clamp. 10 seconds. The command ship finally moved, angling its prow toward them. Its central weapon began to glow, a deep, burning crimson. 5 seconds. The bridge lights flickered. Power systems strained, the whole ship trembling like it knew what was coming. The overdrive fired. The recoil slammed through the Unyielding Resolve, making the deck shiver and every loose item rattle against the bulkheads. The beam that erupted from their prow was brighter than anything Kalen had ever seen in combat, a column of pure annihilation that carved through the void and smashed into the command ship dead center. Its crimson glow died instantly. The hull didn't rupture. It vaporized, splitting down the middle in a shower of molten debris. The two halves drifted apart, venting atmosphere and fragments into the black. For a moment, the battlefield went still. The remaining alien ships hesitated, their formation breaking just slightly. That hesitation was all humanity needed. "Hit them while they're thinking about it," Vance barked. They poured everything they had left into them. Every missile, every plasma shot, every slug from the railguns. Another ship went dark, its engines blown out. The last two turned tail, their retreat vectors already accelerating. The void went quiet again. The bridge crew exhaled as one. Some slumped in their seats. Others kept their eyes locked on the readouts, unwilling to believe it was over. Vance sat back slowly, his eyes on the drifting wreckage of the command ship. "They'll be back," Kalen said quietly. He didn't look at Kalen when he answered. "Good, let them bring more. We'll keep ending negotiations until they get the message." This was humanity's first contact. Not a greeting, but a resounding, brutal statement. And the galaxy had just heard it loud and clear. If you want to witness more of humanity's unyielding resolve, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. What do you think happens next? Let us know in the comments below and tell us where you are watching from. The unyielding resolve limped, but she did not break. Her journey through Xylosian territory was a testament to stubborn defiance. Every internal groan of metal, every flicker of failing lights was a painful breath from a wounded Leviathan. Kalen watched the power readouts with grim fascination. Shields were at 10%, barely a shimmer of resistance. Primary weapons were offline, the spinal cannon a ruined monument, its barrel scorched and fused. Only a few railguns and secondary plasma lances remained operational, running on scavenged energy conduits. Ahead, the Xylosian star system of Xylos Prime blazed, a beacon of alien power. Long-range scans, patched together by ingenuity and sheer desperation, painted a terrifying picture. Not just a fleet, but a veritable armada. Dozens of warships, larger and more imposing than anything they had faced, ringed the central gas giant. Command vessels, heavy cruisers, support carriers, an entire civilization's military might gathered in one place. They were waiting, but not for the unyielding resolve. They were waiting for orders, for intelligence, for their own carefully calculated moment to strike back at humanity. Captain Vance stood at the bridge viewport, his silhouette framed by the distant, swirling clouds of the gas giant. He had not slept, had barely eaten. His jaw was set, eyes burning with an unyielding resolve that mirrored the ship's name. "Status, Kalen." His voice was low, rasping. "Sir, we are at 73 hours from full power restoration for even minimal FTL jump. Remaining combat readiness, minimal. We are a ghost ship." Vance nodded. "Good, we will not be jumping." A cold dread coiled in Kalen's gut. "Sir, the fleet is overwhelming. A direct assault is suicide." Vance finally turned, his gaze sweeping across the grim, exhausted faces of the bridge crew. "No, it is a declaration. They think we are wounded prey. They expect us to retreat, to hide, to send a diplomatic envoy to beg for terms. We will give them none of that. We will give them the ultimate negotiation." He slammed a hand on his console. "Helm, set course for Xylos Prime orbital defense grid. Tactical, plot-firing solutions for simultaneous engagement of all active command vessels within that grid. Engineering, I need every scrap of power you can divert to weapons. Every single railgun slug, every plasma lance burst. This is the last stand." The bridge went silent. The sheer audacity of the command hung in the air, a breathtaking, impossible defiance. To plunge a crippled ship headfirst into the heart of an alien empire's military might, it was beyond suicidal. It was madness. But it was human. The unyielding resolve, her internal systems screaming in protest, began her final, desperate approach. She moved like a wounded beast, not fleeing but charging. The Xylosian fleet didn't immediately react. Their sensors, designed for distant threats, likely dismissed the faint, damaged signature of a single human vessel. A lone blip, easily ignored amidst the thrum of their vast armada. "They're not reacting, sir," the tactical officer whispered, or in his voice. "They will," Vance affirmed, "when we are close enough to hurt them." The tension on the bridge was a palpable thing, a suffocating blanket of anticipation. Kalen watched the Xylosian ships grow larger, their sleek, alien forms now starkly visible, so many of them, too many. Then, at what seemed like the last possible moment, Vance's voice cut through the silence, sharp and clear. "All batteries fire! Humanity, heck yeah!" The unyielding resolve, wounded but unbowed, unleashed everything she had. It wasn't a volley, it was a desperate, concentrated explosion of fury. Railguns, operating on dangerously overloaded capacitors, spat their heavy slugs. Plasma lances, pushed to critical temperatures, tore through the void. The surprise was absolute. The Xylosian fleet, expecting nothing, was caught utterly off guard. The first few salvos, directed with surgical precision at command and communications vessels, ripped through their shields and hulls, causing immediate, catastrophic system failures. Sirens blared across the Xylosian comms, an alien cacophony of panic and confusion. The disciplined formation, moments before an impenetrable wall, rippled with disarray. Direct hit on Xylosian flagship, comm relays failing, the tactical officer shouted, his voice cracking with exhilaration. Multiple capital ships showing critical power fluctuations. But the Xylosians were not helpless. Their overwhelming numbers began to react. Scores of energy beams, brilliant and deadly, lanced out from every direction, slamming into the unyielding resolve's fragile shields. The bridge lights flickered wildly, alarms screaming a constant, piercing shriek. Shields collapsing. Hull breaches in sections 3, 5, and 9, main power conduits compromised. Kalen gritted their teeth, feeding every available joule of power to the railguns, lining up shots, targeting exposed weapon hardpoints. Each hit from the unyielding resolve was a punch from a dying god. Each retaliatory blast from the Xylosian fleet was a hammer blow against a fracturing shield. "They're attempting to box us in, sir," Commander Valen yelled, wrestling with the helm controls. The ship bucked violently, throwing Kalen against their console. "Too many of them, we're caught." Vance's voice cut through the chaos, cool and precise. "No, they are caught. They are caught by their own preconceptions. Helm, execute final gambit protocol. Tactical, prepare all remaining ordnance for full, simultaneous discharge into their formation center." Final gambit. Kalen knew it. A maneuver so desperate, so reckless, it had never been practiced outside simulations. It involved sacrificing the ship's main drive to create a massive, localized energy surge, effectively a controlled, localized detonation, followed by the release of every last projectile weapon in a final, all-or-nothing strike. It would guarantee widespread destruction to the enemy, but it would also guarantee the unyielding resolve would never move under her own power again. It was a one-way trip. "Sir, the unyielding resolve won't survive that," Kalen shouted, their heart pounding against their ribs. "She does not need to," Vance replied, his gaze unwavering, fixed on the unfolding chaos of the Xylosian fleet. "She only needs to make her statement final." The unyielding resolve shuddered one last, colossal time. The main drive began to overload, not with a roar, but with a deep internal groan that vibrated through every deck, every bulkhead, every bone in Kalen's body. The ship's lights went out, plunging the bridge into crimson emergency strobes. Power drained from every system, funneling into the central core, building to an incomprehensible peak. The Xylosian fleet, realizing the human ship was doing something utterly mad, unleashed a desperate, concentrated barrage. Beams tore through the Unyielding Resolve's already shattered hull, ripping open entire sections. Atmosphere vented into the void in silent, crystallizing plumes. The bridge shuddered, pieces of the ceiling tearing free, consoles exploding in showers of sparks. "Now!" Vance roared, his voice barely audible over the destruction. The Unyielding Resolve detonated. Not a cataclysmic explosion that vaporized her, but a targeted, controlled release of raw, unbridled energy. A silent, blinding nova erupted from her core, slamming into the tightly packed Xylosian formation. Simultaneously, every remaining railgun, every plasma lance, every last missile fired. A final, incandescent scream of defiance. The Xylosian fleet, caught in the heart of the blast, reeled. Shields overloaded, hulls buckled, command structures disintegrated. The sheer, unexpected fury of the blast tore through their formation like a physical hand, scattering debris, igniting internal fires, sending ships tumbling helplessly. It wasn't annihilation, but it was absolute chaos. Ships that had moments before been pristine instruments of war were now crippled, burning wrecks, their elegant lines fractured, their systems silenced. The Xylosian tactical network, moments before a symphony of coordinated attack, dissolved into a cacophony of frantic, disjointed signals. Then the Unyielding Resolve, her mission accomplished, went dark. Her lights winked out, her systems silenced. She drifted now, a silent, shattered hulk, her form a testament to the unyielding spirit that had burned within her. The void around Xylos Prime was no longer a symbol of alien power. It was a graveyard. The shattered remains of Xylosian warships spun slowly, their once proud forms twisted into grotesque monuments of defeat. Amidst them, the Unyielding Resolve floated, a silent sentinel, a derelict but triumphant. On the few Xylosian vessels that remained functional, a profound silence descended. Their sensors confirmed the human ship was inert, no longer a threat. But the destruction it had wrought, the sheer, unimaginable audacity of its final act, was seared into their collective consciousness. They had faced a single, crippled human vessel, and it had, against all odds, crippled their fleet. The remaining Xylosian ships did not pursue, they did not celebrate. They slowly, deliberately began to gather their wounded, their fallen. The battle was over, the message delivered. Days later, the Unyielding Resolve was found, not by the Xylosians who had retreated into stunned isolation, but by a human long-range patrol. They expected wreckage. They found a miracle. Her hull was a honeycomb of damage, entire sections missing, but her bridge remained miraculously intact, sealed against the vacuum. Kalen was among the few survivors, rescued from the bridge with Captain Vance, barely conscious but alive. The medical teams worked tirelessly, saving lives that by all rights should have perished. In the Deep Space Rehabilitation Station, Kalen slowly recovered, the phantom pain of the Unyielding Resolve's final, defiant shudder still echoing in their bones. Captain Vance was confined to a medical bay, his body broken, but his spirit unyielding. Kalen visited him as soon as they could walk. "We did it, sir," Kalen whispered, their voice raw. "We broke them, they won't forget." Vance, his face pale, managed a faint, grim smile. "No, they won't. They expected negotiations. We gave them consequences." He paused, his gaze distant, as if seeing beyond the station walls into the vast, unknown cosmos. This was not the end of the conflict, Kalen. This was merely the start of understanding. The Xylosian ascendancy, once proud and expansive, pulled back from contested borders. Their broadcasts, once filled with confident pronouncements, became hushed, wary. Other alien species in the sector, once dismissive of the brash, young human empire, watched with new eyes. The tales spread through the galactic net, of the human vessel that, rather than surrender, plunged into the heart of a superior force and shattered it from within. They spoke of the madness of humanity, the unyielding terror, the dreadnought that ends negotiations. The unyielding resolve would never fly again. Her sacrifice was absolute, but her legend was born, a legend of humanity's unyielding spirit, of a species that, when pushed to the brink, would not just fight, but would redefine the very meaning of conflict. She was not a ship of war. She was a monument to a species that would carve its place in the stars with audacity and unbridled will. And Kalen, now a decorated veteran, felt the call of the void still. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and dangers, and somewhere out there, new stories awaited. Stories of first contact, and humanity would be ready for every single one. If you were captivated by this tale of humanity's unyielding spirit and the dreadnought that reshaped galactic diplomacy, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of human defiance against the cosmos. And tell us in the comments below, what was your favorite moment from the entire series?